as he looked at the batting lineup. "Althaus, you're on deck," he called out with a cringe. No response. I was too preoccupied by the praying mantis that I'd spotted while searching for four-leaf clovers at the far end of the bench to hear his call. "Daggone it, Ryan, quit daydreaming, grab a bat, and get your ass out of the dugout." Huh? Me? The abrupt call of my coach made me choke on the wad of big league chew that had been accumulating in my mouth since the fourth inning. "That's my boy," I heard my father shout from the bleachers as I scanned a scene that I'd have done anything to escape. But I was trapped. No way out except through the dreaded batter's box. That torturous, chalk-lined rectangular target for hard-hitting, bruise-inducing, leather-bound baseballs. "Here, now put this on and get out there," my coach said as he crowned me with an oversized plastic helmet that did nothing to protect the other 95% of my scrawny body. It was the final game of the regular season by that point, and I'd been hit by 8 pitches that spring, despite not having hit a pitch. Thus, I knew at the time my teammates were praying that I'd stand in the way of the ball instead of attempting to swing at it. Timeout. Let me explain the circumstances in terms of our Sunday morning service. You see, Little League Baseball has this absurd rule that each child has to play at least 3 innings per game. And every weekend throughout the spring, I found myself the innocent victim of that ridiculous rule. It wasn't so bad when we were in the field. You see, in fact, I actually enjoyed chasing butterflies from the blissfully boring position out in right field. But when the time came to be called to bat, everything changed. Now, I doubt the German theologian Martin Luther was a baseball fan, given the sport didn't make it into our history books until the mid-1800s, some 300 years after the theologian famously coined the phrase, priestlyhood of the believer. However, the founder of the Lutheran denomination was never one to warm the bench, nor did he appreciate others doing the same. In my humble opinion, I actually feel Luther would have likely kept his mouth shut had he been stuck in the middle of a middle school baseball game growing up, but that just wasn't the case. Instead, the outspoken monk wanted everybody to have equal playing time, no matter how uncoordinated an adolescent or unscholarly a Sunday morning worshiper they were. Now, I first mentioned my friend Martin several months ago during one of our fellowship's Q&A services in response to the question, what's next for UUFSC upon Reverend Russ's retirement? Or in accordance to today's metaphorical theme, who's going to step up to the plate? And the answer 5 centuries ago is the same as it is today. You and me, we. Yep, that's right. Grab the bat, spit out your sunflower seeds, and stop picking daisies in far right field because this is your time to shine. Or to go down swinging, which, may I add, is also perfectly acceptable. Priestlyhood of the believer. It sounds pretty powerful, but what does it mean? All right, rewind a little bit. It was the year 1517 when Marty, our middle-aged monk, caused a religious uproar in the Catholic Church by nailing what are now known as the 95 Theses to the chapel door of the country's most prevalent university. 95 points of discussion, or should I say disagreement, with the not-so-open-minded religious right of the era. Now, to this day, I'm sure that many of our recovering Catholic congregants could muster up 95 or so points of contention with the institution if they were pushed. And that's great because disagreement is a demonstration of thinking for oneself, a key characteristic of an everyday priest. You see, everything was fair game for Luther, from indulgences, buying your way into a pleasurable afterlife, to the pursuit of reason and righteousness. But the real controversial conversation starter was that little line that alluded to a very big responsibility: priesthood of the believer. It was an outrageous idea that eventually led the German reformer to translate the New Testament of the Bible directly from Greek into German and release it for the world, the whole conglomeration of us common benchwarmers, to read, interpret, discuss, and debate. Up until that point in history, scriptures were reserved for the wealthy and or wise Latin-speaking clergy, who would gather flocks of sheeple Catholic people in a sanctuary for a daily mass that no one could actually understand. That might be the same here when I'm speaking, but at least you guys are looking like you're getting a couple of the words. Needless to say, whether we are blubbering about baseball from a bench or babbling about baptism from a pew, the message is the same this morning at the fellowship here in the year 2023 as it was for common folk in 1517 Germany. You're up. And you have a decision to make. Are you going to follow John Fogerty or tremble in the batter's box in fear? Put me in, coach. I'm ready to play today. The tune may be catchy and its call inclusive, but the reality is that it's easier sung than acted upon. And like any good prophet, Luther had to live out his message before ever proclaiming it. So jump back a decade or so to the year 1505. When a young and up-and-coming lawyer named Martin had recently graduated from university en route to improving upon the legacy of his working-class coal mining father. It was a respected profession that allowed Luther to wine, dine, and work with the elite of society. However, God had other plans. While venturing home one evening, a severe thunderstorm erupted that left Luther lost in the woods. Scared, alone, and is often the case with fear, instantly religious. We all know the drill. We put faith on the back burner while going through the motions of life until all of a sudden we receive a cancer diagnosis, or our child is in a car accident, or we hit turbulence on a flight. Any number of unfortunate events that remind us of our mortality, or that of those whom we love. So what do? We start to pray and begin to bargain with the divine. We've all been there. God, if you save me, I will give more to the poor. Krishna, heal me, and I'll swear less. I'll go to church more. I'll feed the hungry. I'll house the homeless. Any number of promises shouted to the sky in order to bargain our way out of the unpleasantries of the present. Hell, even the atheist often slips up and summons the spirit when they get a little scared. And Luther, as luck would have it, was scared of lightning. Save me, Saint Anna, he hollered to the heavens, summoning the spirit of the Virgin Mary's mother. Save me, and I shall become a monk. That's a pretty big bargain. Now, I'd imagine there are folks in this very room who have already thrown a conditional clause or two this morning up to the heavens, and it's only 10:30 a.m. Unfortunately, more often than not, ours are often empty promises, prescriptive pleas from the pews or pitchers' mounds. But not so for Martin. Instead, when the thunderous eruptions subsided upon his request, Luther left humbled, not to mention a little holier than he had been upon entering the woods that evening. And in response, he ditched his diplomacy along with his father's dream and began his journey to become a monk the following day. FYI, humility is the next characteristic of an everyday prophet. So what is the lesson here? Are we all called to quit our jobs and pursue a clerical career? Not at all. In fact, that's just the point. And in lieu of my job security, thank God. Though it took Luther over a decade of strict study, silent meditation, and mingling with other monks to come to his conclusion, or conclusions, remember he had 95, Martin began to realize something during his spiritual quest. That he was no holier having learned Latin, Hebrew, and Greek than he had been upon exiting law school. Older, yes. Bolder, indeed. Wiser, true. More priestly, not in the slightest. In fact, having been isolated from society for over a decade, many might claim he had actually fallen out of touch with the common culture. So no, Luther the monk was no better equipped to pursue and preach the divine than any of the many pew-perching benchwarmers that shuffled into his sanctuary on a Sunday morning. He just happened to know the language. Priestlyhood of the believer. Powerful. Yet it seemed that there is a conditional clause written into that claim. You must first believe. And not just in an external, omnipotent being. You must believe in yourself. Believe in an essence higher than you that resides in you. Believe in our world, as unbelievable and ugly as it can be. Believe that you can hit a leather-bound baseball over a right field fence. And that says a lot because believing can be really darn difficult nowadays. What's more, with belief comes responsibility. The responsibility to empower others to embrace their own divinity. The responsibility to speak truthfully, humbly, and passionately. The responsibility to admit you don't know and to be okay with that truth. The responsibility to step up to the plate when the universe calls you out of the dugout and face your fear of striking out. Because we are human and we all miss the mark on occasion. Yes, everyone sitting in or zooming into this sanctuary has a priestly designation and a divine responsibility. And now that Rev Russ is sunbathing on the shores of Tahiti, it seemed that we are all in need of a few pinch hitters. Because I, for one, would rather go down swinging than have to forfeit the game for a lack of players. So what's all this mean in your life? Priestlyhood. It doesn't have to mean filling a pulpit, though many of you have taken up that challenge. It doesn't mean wearing a goofy clerical collar or an unflattering robe, though you are more than welcome to do so if you choose. Moreover, it's not a call to piety or celibacy so much as a call to celebration. Because faith should be fun. What it means is to trust your intuition and honor the truth that you have everything necessary to set off on a spiritual quest, and moreover, to share the secrets that you gain in the process with all your friends and family sitting around you today. It means embracing doubt on occasion. It means disagreeing with the goofy red-headed Presbyterian minister standing in front of you and not being afraid to voice it. It means being curious and ending your sentences with question marks instead of periods, or better yet, with ellipses. It means seeking answers despite knowing there aren't any easily found. It also means listening to your fellow priests, despite being on a different, yet parallel path. It's a call to remain open-minded, to speak with instead of speak over or at others. Priestlyhood of the believer. It's a call from embedded to deliberative faith. from the "this is what I was told to follow in Sunday school" kind of faith to the "stir my soul with indescribable ecstasy" kind of stuff. A spiritual evolutionary journey from passivity to action. And when you doubt that you are called or equipped, turn back to those unexpected prophets and priests who have taken up the challenge before you. Take Muhammad, for instance, a pretty non-spectacular orphan that became the cornerstone of the Muslim faith. Maybe Joseph Smith, who was seeking ways to save his floundering family's farm when he stumbled upon a few golden plates. Siddhartha Gautama, a sheltered prince who was sitting under a Bodhi tree, depressed about his failed attempts to achieve enlightenment, when Eureka, the eightfold path, presented itself. What about the prophet Isaiah, who responded to the Lord's call, "Whom shall I send?" by jumping up and being priestly? "Here I am, send me." Or maybe it's the 12 disciples of Christ, fishermen and tax collectors that proceeded to script the Gospels that we still read today. We are all called and we are all equipped. The question is whether or not you are willing to step into the batter's box. True, you might strike out. In full transparency, I personally feel like I've been hitting a slump as of late, swinging too high or too low, too early or too late. But that's part of the game. And though you may not win every game, losing teaches you a lot more than not playing. And life is just that, a game. So don't forget to have fun along the way. You might get hit by a pitch, and I won't lie, it kind of hurts. But remember, that also comes with an invitation to take a free base. There are times when you'll get walked, when things seem to flow and life is easy. And lo and behold, there are times when you will hit a homer. Back to my story. All right, that was a long digression. It was the bottom of the eighth, 1 run down, and I had been summoned out of the dugout, handed a bat, and pushed up to the plate. I stared at the pitcher as he wound up, and he hurled the ball my way. Strike one. Didn't even see it coming. But I still had 2 strikes to go, so I stared on. Again, this exaggerated windup, pulled back, ball one. 3 more of those, and I could take my base, breathe a sigh of relief, everything was good. And then another wind up, swoosh, strike 2. I simply watched the perfectly placed pitch pass over the plate. This wasn't looking good. I knew that I had to at least attempt to swing at the next ball if I wanted any shot at respect for my teammates. Wind up, and ball 2, way outside. All right, 2 and 2. Here we go. I knocked the dirt from my shoes like I'd seen the pros on TV do, and I looked into the pitcher's unforgiving eyes in prayer that he didn't see the fear in my own. Then he pulled his arm back like an archer ready to release an arrow. And there it was. The ball seemed to soar towards me in slow motion. And it looked a little close for comfort when it did. So what did I do? I shut my eyes and cringed. However, upon cowering, I heard a crack. I had accidentally bunted the ball up the third base line. I had gotten a hit. Yes, unexpected and slightly embarrassing, but somehow, by the grace of God, I was still in the game. And in response, I dropped my bat and I bolted for first base like no other. Safe! The umpire shouted as I stepped onto the bag. It wasn't a home run, nor did it look very spectacular to any spectator. But I had finally earned my way on the first base. I was officially a baseball player. Not the VIP, nor the cleanup hitter, but that's all right, because those are ego positions. And ego has an obnoxious way of obstructing enlightenment. You've got a beat up glove and a homemade bat and a brand new pair of shoes. You know, I think it's time to give this game a ride. Just to hit the ball and touch them all, a moment in the sun. It's gone and you can tell that one goodbye. This, friends, is your moment to shine. And you have everything you need to reflect the shine of the sun for all the world to see. So what message are you called to preach? And through what medium are you called to speak? I'm going to continue on the worship service today, and I want you guys just to think that. Where do I want to jump in the future? Where do I fit in this beautiful evolution that the church or that the fellowship is facing today? So thank you, and amen.